For us to be able to unleash the potential as young people, we have to first of all answer the story problem. And I'll ask you this morning, what story do you hold of yourself? I want to welcome every one of us. They've asked me to speak about frames of change, how young people can use storytelling, narrative to frame and unleash their potential. Quite a topic. I thought about it, I prayed about it, I read about it, and I'm like, okay, I'll be here. Let's share thoughts, let's share ideas. The greatest story ever told is the story you tell yourself about yourself. Not the stories you read about, not the stories you hear about other people who did what, where it happened and how it happened. But the story you tell yourself about yourself is the greatest story ever told. We are told that humans are made of two things. First, nature and nurture, right? But there is a third leg to that table, which is narrative. How you were born, where you were born, you have no control over it. How you are nurtured, a bit of a control over it. But the biggest influence that changes a man's life, it's not necessarily the surroundings of where he was born or how he was born, how he was raised, but the story he or she holds about themselves. How we see the world, how we make sense of the world, how we interact with the world, are the result of the models of narratives that we hold. They said, we do not see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. And of course, it's a common thing with artists of the photography space. You can put 2, 3 photographers together in a space to photograph it. They are going to photograph it so differently. They will see the light differently. And of course, they'll have, even if they have the same cameras, the same lens, but they're going to frame it not for the subject and how it is in itself, but how they are and how their inner configuration is reflected through their work. For a people to be conquered, they have to first of all believe they can be conquered. I was at Area 10 UTC at a friend's shop some months ago. And these guys were having a conversation, and one of them said something that stuck with me, and it really got me thinking about myself, about being an African, about being in Africa and how we have done business with the rest of the world. The guy said, you cannot hold a man down who believes he doesn't belong there. For a people to be conquered, they have to first believe the story that they can be conquered. As young people, we live in a country that is hostile, I would say. Nigeria is a hostile environment. But the question remains, are we going to allow ourselves to be held back by the stories, by the narratives of what's happening in politics, what's happening in the private sector? Or we are going to wake up and say, no, I believe this of myself. This is the story I hold of myself, and I'm going to take what I see from within and put it out there. And that basically explains what we have done with the Abuja Photo Festival. A young guy who basically was trying to understand what photography in itself was about, thought and said, you know, we can have something like this in Abuja with no reference, with no point of reference that he could draw from. But there was this belief that was inspired by a story or a series of stories being told to himself over time. For us to be able to unleash the potential as young people, we have to first of all answer the story problem. And I'll ask you this morning, what story do you hold of yourself? Is it the story that you were told by your parents, your siblings? In my 200 level, in the University of Benin, the lecturer looked at me and said, bros, the way you are going, I'm not sure you're going to make anything good out of your life. That was in 2000 or 2001. Then fast forward to 2022. I went back to Benin. I went to do a few things in Benin, and I walked into my faculty. And I saw the same lecturer. And he said to me, look at how fresh you are. You must be eating politicians' money in Abuja. And I said, okay, if somebody has to eat their money, so it had better also be me. What made the difference? I could have taken the story he told me and probably become, my dad had a house in Benin, my eldest brother had a house in Benin, probably become the son of a landlord who is harassing tenants to pay their 250,000 naira rent in the apartment they were staying, or join one of the political talk gangs and live a normal life. Or take the story told as a foil, refine it, and use it to power and become the very dream that I've always imagined myself to be. To unleash that potential, you have to own your story, you have to own your narrative. Like I said, Nigeria is hard, but you have to be harder. Nigeria is tough. You have to hold the story by yourself to be tougher. There are 4 stories you must tell yourself to unleash your potential. First, the story of purpose, the narrative of purpose. You must realize that God did not put you into this world to come and work, hustle, and die. There is a higher calling to your life. I've always questioned, why am I in Nigeria? I could have I was in New York in 2020 on a project sponsored by the US Embassy. I got to New York, it felt like my ancestral home. I said, this is, yes, born in Benin, but this is my roots. You must realize that your life has a meaning. Broke, sickly, challenged by whatever it is, they are all coming together. They say we live life forward, but we understand it backward. When we started the photo festival, all the challenges that happened, I look back now and I said, I'm glad we went through what we went through. Otherwise now, as we are beginning to be successful, becoming TEDx speaker, could have been cocky. But when we started, it felt like, who sent me this work? So you must understand that even the suffering has a meaning, has a purpose. You must hold that story, first of all, to be able to unleash your potential. The second narrative you must hold of yourself is the narrative of faith. You have to believe. I'm a big believer in self-belief. God has given us all it takes to thrive, all it takes to win. Just like your early parents would want you to be more successful than they. In the same way, God is your father, put you in this world, give you everything. Even being in Nigeria is part of the thing he gave you to be able to maximize your potential and live the life you were created to live. So you must tell yourself the story of faith, that you have what it takes, regardless of the other stories that are being screamed into your mind. You must be defiant against the odds. You must be defiant against the odds. You must believe in yourself. Believe in people. Yeah, there are bad people. But yes, there are a lot of good people. And I've been privileged to meet many of them. I remember in January of 2017, I picked the phone and I called a random number. If a guy who will later become a friend, a mentor, and a guide. And I said, sir, I have this idea. We're creating this thing we call the Abuja Photo Festival. And I would need your guidance. He didn't know me, and I did not know him. I saw his number somewhere. And he said to me, if you're serious with what you're doing, I'm going to stand by you and I'm going to support you. It's been 10 years. He has held true to his word. They are good people. They are angels in human forms. The third story you must tell yourself is the story of mistakes. How do you see mistakes? How do you define failure? Do you see the glass half empty or you see it half full? I think it was the keynote speaker who talked about failure or mistakes being an opportunity for growth. Yes, the quote said, obstacle is the way. We grow through those difficult times. Diamond won't be diamond except it go through under such intense pressure. failures, the mistakes are those things where your character is refined. Your clarity is refined. And your humanity comes out. Because of how we have grown, we've made mistakes, we've experimented many times, we've made mistakes, and now it's looking like, yes, we are living the dream. We couldn't have done all of those things if we didn't make the mistakes that we made. So when you make of your mistakes, of your seemingly failure, if there's a word like that, will help you maximize and release your potential. The last story, the last narrative you must tell yourself as a young person is the narrative of success. Success has destroyed more people than failure or mistakes. Because success is, I like the way the Bible puts it, they call it the deceitfulness of riches. And that sometimes gets me fearful. We want to be rich, we want to, but riches come with deceitfulness. Submitted the proposal to a guy some years ago, brilliant proposal. We tried to, get him to put money into it. The guy looked at me and said, I can't relate to what you are saying because I was born with a silver spoon. I took the proposal and I walked away, but he left me with an impression. As we begin to climb that ladder of success, as we begin to enter that space we've always dreamed, that is when we should be most careful. Because we have seen people rise so high and life happened. So as a young person with limitless potential and with limitless horizon right in front of you, you must take these 4 stories and constantly tell yourself, rehearse them to yourself again and again and again. Because like I said, the greatest story ever told is the story you tell yourself about yourself. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.